Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Mindy for lawnfawn, and in today's video I am going to be creating two very clean and simple holiday cards featuring the Mice on Ice stamp set. Here's a look at the new stamp set. I was dying to color up these cute little mice. Even though I'm not ready for winter, I really wanted to color these cuties up. So I'm actually going to use the new River Rock ink from Lawnfawn, which is Copic friendly. I knew that I wanted to color these mice gray, and I thought this would be a perfect combination to do that. I have not colored anything in gray ink before or using a gray ink. I've always gone to the black, but I really wanted to give this a try. Now I did stamp these also in the jet black ink, and I will show you that later on in the video. So I'm starting off by coloring this first little mouse. I'm using my Copic markers C6, C4, and C2. I added my darkest color to the back of the head, blending out with that C4, and then adding a highlight area to the C2. C4, since I am using three Copic color combination, C4 is going to be my main color when I'm coloring in these mice. Your darkest color and your highlight area, you only want small bits of when you're doing some Copic coloring with a 3-marker blend. So these did turn out a little bit darker than I anticipated, but I really liked using that River Rock ink with these. You could also use the crunchy leaves and color your mice brown. That would look adorable as well. I did leave the rest of the Copic coloring in the video. I did speed it up just because they are small areas, and I did pretty much the same technique through all of them, adding in that darkest color to just one side of them, blending out with the C4, and then finishing with my highlight, which is a C2. Then adding in R20 and R21 for the ears, and R01 for the belly. For the scarves, I kept them all the same. I used BG49 and BG34. Now this did actually kind of turn out more green than I anticipated. I was looking for more of an aqua color, and that's what prompted me to create the green card that you're going to see in a little while. But I really liked this color combination, and I did really like how the scarves turned out. There was a quick look at my mice colored in the jet black ink, which you'll see again shortly. So now I'm just using the coordinating die, holding them in place with some low tack tape, and I'll run that through my die cut machine. Now I'm just going to do some really quick ink blending. And to be honest, my original plan was to leave this card completely white, which is really hard for me, but I could not resist just adding a little bit of ink blending onto these backgrounds. So this is Festive Berries, and I'm starting off by ink blending the edges using my life-changing blender brushes from Picket Studios, starting off of the card base and blending onto it, just going in slightly. Once I have the edges done, I'm using the ink that's already on my brush. I'm not going to get more, and I'm just blending that in towards the middle a little bit. I'm leaving the middle of that cardstock white. I just wanted that to be kind of a highlight area in my card where my sentiment is going to go. And then I'm going to take Barn Door Distress Oxide ink. I'm going to just squish some down onto my mat, spritz some water down. I'll mix that up with my paintbrush and add some flicks to my background. That's just to create a little bit of interest. And I'll set that off on the side to dry. And then I'm going to work on the green background. So I thought this would look really nice with the BG Copic color combination I have for the scarves. I'm going to repeat the same process, ink blending those edges first. This is using Evergreen Bough Distress Oxide ink. Once I have the edges done, I use the remaining ink that I have either on my mat there or left on my brush and blending in towards the middle. I'm going to take pine needles, add that to my mat, spritz with water, and then I'm going to flick that on my background as well. For my sentiment, I'm going to use that scripty joyful that is on the Mice on Ice stamp set. And I thought this looked really cool because then I would have it arranged so it looked like my mice had wrote that with their skates. This is using the chili pepper cardstock. I prepped that with my anti-static powder tool. And then I'm going to ink up my sentiment with the clear embossing ink from Lawnfawn. Now notice I am doing this towards the bottom of this piece of cardstock. This is just 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm stamping that towards the bottom because when I die cut, I am going to die cut a few more of these out of this same piece. So I'm getting the most out of this piece of cardstock. Then I'm just sprinkling on some white embossing powder, and I'm going to just set that off on the side for a moment. And while I have my stamp in my MISTI tool, I'm going to repeat that same step using the Rainforest cardstock. I thought this was a really great contrasting color to my green background that I had ink blended. So stamping that down, sprinkling on some of that white embossing powder again. And then once my heat tool is nice and heated up, I'll come in and melt those, and that white just really pops against these backgrounds. Then I'm going to line up the coordinating die over my sentiment and die cut that out, and I will cut 2 more of those out of each piece of cardstock. So we are going to do a little bit of layering. This is just going to add dimension to our sentiments because our mice will be in the background, and I wanted the sentiment to kind of pop up a little bit more. And these are fairly skinny letters, so to do it this way, cutting a couple of those extra out of the cardstock, that saves me from having to cut really skinny pieces of foam tape. So I'm just layering those together with the Lawnfawn liquid glue. And then I'll give you a closer look here of the dimension that creates. You could add a couple more layers if you wanted to get some more dimension. Now one more piece I needed to stamp out was a beginning and ending sentiment. You could just leave it as joyful, but I wanted to have a little bit more of a message to it. And I'm going to use black cardstock for both of these. This is just simplifying the process. If you wanted to make a bunch of these cards, using the same cardstock really helps move this process along. Now I wanted this to say holiday instead of holidays. So using a Post-it note, I covered up the S and then inked up my sentiment with the clear ink. And then I'll sprinkle on that white embossing powder again. And you can see the S is there just a little bit. So I'm going to take a paintbrush and just brush those little specks of embossing powder away. And then I can flip that over and repeat that same step. So you can always alter your sentiments just by that Post-it note. And once you wipe away any excess powder that might be on there, it's going to have exactly what you want it to say. It's not going to show up whatsoever. So once I sprinkle that on, I'll go ahead and heat these up until they are nice and melted. And then I like to take a Swiffer cloth and kind of brush off any of that excess powder from the anti-static powder tool and just really let that black pop in the background. And I will trim these down into some thin strips to add to my card front. The rest of this is just adhering the cards together. So I'm not gluing down that joyful sentiment. I just kind of have it placed there so I know where to put my mice. And then just attaching those all around the sentiment with some liquid glue. I did take a little bit of foam tape and added it behind my small black strips for my sentiment. And I'll just place those one up above that says Have a, and that it'll say joyful, and adding holidays next to that mouse in the bottom. And I thought that was cute. It looked like he was kind of holding that sentiment there. So I will do the same thing here with my green background. I love how these mice look like they're sending that message to you where they kind of skated that in there. So you don't always have to use traditional colors like it for a skating pond. You can bring in any colors. You could even do rainbow. I love changing up the colors and kind of having this monochromatic look to it. And then just finishing this one off with those skinny strip sentiments. So there's a look at both of our cards. One is stamped in the River Rock ink, and the other one is stamped in that jet black ink. Both of them are really great for Copic coloring, and they both look really adorable. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.